Are you in trouble right now? Chances are, if you're not in trouble right now, if you're not facing some kind of difficulty right now, you've just got through some sort of trouble, or you're heading into some kind of trouble. Life is like the weather. We're always coming in and out of one kind of weather system or another. It's full of highs and lows and everything in between. We live on a broken planet, beautiful but broken, and we're all broken in some way or another. And to all of us, Jesus declares this today. In this world, he says, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. When Jesus gives us a dream, we need to make good daily decisions to go after that dream. Delays are inevitable. We heard that last time, but delays aren't necessarily God's denials. Difficulties, trouble will always be around the next corner. But for a few moments, let's just take a look at some of the lessons we can learn when it comes to this. We can learn some stuff here from Acts 27. You know, the Apostle Paul was an amazing man. God did so much through his life, and yet he faced trouble that I can only hope that you and I never have to face in our lifetimes for the sake of God and his kingdom. You know, this was a man who never gave up on the dream that God gave him. We find him in Acts 27. He's a prisoner for his faith, and he's on a prison ship heading across the Mediterranean to Rome. God told him that there was going to be a storm, he warns the captain and the crew not to sail, but they grew impatient and they went anyway, and their impatience led them to shipwreck. How many times have you, or I certainly have, ended up in trouble because I got impatient? Whatever your trouble is today, whether you're experiencing an emotional shipwreck, relational shipwreck, financial shipwreck, maybe your career feels like it's on the rocks, here's what we do when we know that we're sailing into difficult waters. We stop asking the question, why? Why has God let this happen? Why has he done this to me? Why is the world? Why? We need to start asking a different question. Often we can't answer the question why until a lot of years or time has passed and we look back in hindsight. But we start asking a different question. And that question is simply this: what or who caused this mess, this trouble, this difficulty that I'm in? You know, occasionally God allows problems to get our attention, to test our faith, to mold our character. On occasion, the devil can be the cause of our problems. In Paul's case, other people were the cause of his trouble. But I don't know about you, but I am great at making my own trouble. The biggest cause of my problems is usually me. Chances are the biggest cause of trouble in your life is you. The first thing we need to do in bad times is to get some truth and clarity. We need to ask ourselves, what's the reason for the difficulty I'm in? Sometimes we just need a different perspective. Sometimes just reminding ourselves how big God is will put our problem back into size, into perspective. Sometimes looking at something from a different angle will help us to see that the wall isn't so thick, the door isn't so hard, the road isn't so impassable after all. The centurion in charge of that ship ignored God, ignored the warnings he'd given him through Paul. And verse 11 says that instead of listening to Paul's advice, he went with the advice of the owner and the captain. You and I are surrounded with experts, folks, ear ticklers who will happily tell us what we want to hear sometimes. Have we listened to bad advice? You know, have we followed the crowd? The majority decided on the ship to sail on. And it's so easy for us to qualify what we want to do by thinking, well, everyone else is doing it. And we just go along with the flow. You know, not every opportunity that lands at our feet is for the taking. Not every job offer, not every date, not every marriage proposal is right to accept. Don't get tempted by that gentle breeze as the crew were tempted. Paul was an innocent victim of people who relied on the circumstances and they made a poor decision. Sometimes, you know, we can just be in the wrong place at the wrong time and we are affected by other people's mistakes. So once we've worked out the reason we're in a phase of difficulty, we need to determine the result. Regardless of who caused it, what does God want me to learn through this? I'm married to a teacher, Believe you me, everything is a lesson. In Paul 5, 3 and 4, Paul writes about his difficulties and how he's learned that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. The glass is half full, folks. It's not half empty as you may feel it is right now. Keep the L plates on. To quote Rick Warren, every problem has a purpose. Every storm is a school. Every trial is a teacher. And every experience is an education. If we look up and are determined to use everything to grow up, then chances are you will make it. We will make it through the storm. Whatever the hell you are going through right now, whatever fears, guilt, strain, sickness you are facing right now, whatever your shipwreck, God has a word for you in your storm. Don't give up. Do not give up. Don't ever give up. So determine the reason for your difficulty. Determine the result you are going to get from that. That something good, something beneficial, maturing can be squeezed out of this shipwreck. And the third key to dealing with difficulty is to determine your response. You know, we've got a choice in lots of things. We have a choice to become bitter or better with what life throws at us. What happens to you isn't as important as what happens in you. You decide your response to trouble, whether you caused it or not. Trouble doesn't have to deplete you. With God's perspective, His Spirit and His Word, you can ensure that trouble shapes you, molds your character, produces patience and perseverance and so much more. After all, God is shaping you, fitting you, building you, ready for eternity. That is what God is interested in. And He will use all of this to make that happen, a reality for you. So finally, let me just mention 3 things that we shouldn't do when we're in trouble. But let's face it, if you're like me, we end up doing it. Firstly, don't drift. In verse 15, it says that the captain and the crew just gave way to the winds. They gave up. They decided to go with the flow. You know, folks, it's a common reaction when life's problems begin to overwhelm us. If we're not careful, we just drift through another year of life. And a few years later, we look back on the dreams, the passions, the energy we once had and wonder where all the time, where all the hope had gone. The goals, the ambitions were just shipwrecked because we just went with the flow. We began to coast. And you know something? Coasting always ends up in a downward direction. No one ever coasts up. Secondly, don't discard. Verse 18 of chapter 27. They started to throw stuff overboard. They threw away the cargo, then the tackle, then the food. The prisoners would have been next. The important stuff they needed to survive, to get the job done, were the first to go. When we're in trouble, we begin to abandon things as well. All those things that replenish us. When we haven't got time, the good things are the first things to go. And chances are we end up just doing the stuff that drains the life out of us. Our values, our morals, our heritage, our people, good friends, relationships don't get our time and our attention. They're important to us, but they're the first to go. You know, we wouldn't dream of doing that in good times, but in bad times, when the trouble hits, we start to distance ourselves and we begin to throw away the good things, the important things, to the point we just want to throw in the towel and walk away. To walk away from the marriage, the church, the friendship, the life we've built. Paul was told that they needed to stay with the ship in order to survive. You know, it's always easier to give up and walk away. Stay. If you're running away through the back door, you'll never make the most of the opportunity to work with God on your character, your life perspective, or to admit we need just to see change, to pray through our circumstances. Don't throw away the chance to change for the better. to get off that cycle of bad decisions and attitudes that just seem to cause us, really, when we look back, we end up just carrying the same bag of trouble into the next relationship, into the next job that comes along. And then thirdly, don't despair. Don't drift, don't discard, don't despair. Hope is the last thing to go at times, isn't it? Don't forget, God is with you. No matter how bleak things appear, He's still got you. He's still in your boat. He is still able to get you through this storm. And you can trust Him as you move forward from the delay phase to the difficulty phase. You know, we've been planning to build a cabin for the last 12 months. God gave us a dream. For us, it was quite a big dream. I'm sure in the grand scheme of things, there are plenty of much bigger dreams out there. But we just felt God asked us to build a place where people who are on the edge, people who are in a season of trouble, can just come for a few days and relax and replenish their souls. And then go home with some energy, some clarity, and hopefully just touched by Jesus and encouraged on a little bit more. Simple. Or so you think. You know, we've had decision after decision to make. We've had delays and more delays. We've had delays with planning. We've had difficulty choosing the right cabin to fit the garden. Oh, there's never anything that fits perfectly. We've had delays with planning, Brexit hold-ups, COVID, wood prices going up through the roof. But as we've stepped one foot in front of the other, prayed things through, we are more determined now to get through these phases of delay and difficulty. I never thought I'd have to deal with flooding. I never thought I'd have to deal with septic tanks, electric fixes, extending concrete pads, digging out trenches, paying extra bills, and the list goes on. Thank God for neighbours with diggers and people that they know as their contacts to help. You know, many a time we have wondered whether to just leave it, to run. You know, we've had our moments of despair and frustration, but it would have been so easy to just think, maybe it's just not for now. Maybe we'll leave it a few years. Maybe we got it wrong. It'd be so easy to blame the council's planning department and say, well, this is all just too expensive. It's too energy consuming. We've got a life, too much headspace filling, too much on top of everything else that we're involved with. But we decide daily to push through the delay. We decide daily to push through the next set of difficulties, knowing that God's dream for our lives and those He will restore through it will be worth it in the end. So let's just quickly wrap this up, folks. What are we learning today? Well, how do we respond to difficulties well? We need to confess our part in it. We need to own up to it. We need to stop the excuses. We need to tame the temper, control the mouth, stop the blame game. Stop blaming your husband or your wife for every single thing that's wrong with our marriage. Whatever, it could be our boss and blaming them for everything that's wrong with our job. We need to stop the blame game. Your teacher, well, stop blaming your teacher for the naff marks we got in our exam results this month. We need to take responsibility for our own actions, our own lack, and our own future with God's help. So we need to confess our part in it, and we need to confront the problem, the difficulty in front of us. We can't keep running, can't keep pretending our problems don't exist. We have to face them carefully, honestly, but straight on. You can't turn a ship in a storm. It'll capsize. You face the waves head on. No, it's not easy. Yes, we may have to eat humble pie, but hear this. God is with you in your boat. You will make it through. Paul had confidence not in the boat, but in his God, who was with him through the literal storm. Even when the boat was falling apart, when the crew was blaming the weather, and when it all seemed like everything was lost, Paul kept hanging on to God's promise and even encouraged everyone else, saying, I urge you, keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost. Only the ship will be destroyed. That's what God had told him. God said they were going to make it. The ship was wrecked, but all 276 people on board that boat made it to shore. Folks, after you've done all you can, your ship still may not make it. You may lose the house, you may lose a job, you may lose a friend, you may lose some savings, perhaps sadly even your marriage. But God may not promise to save your comfort or convenience, but He will save you. You will make it. Hold on. No one has complete, perfect lives, no matter how it appears on social media. We are all broken in some way or another, but with God, you will make it. Whether you're struggling with a broken heart, a home, a career, you will make it to shore. God says to you in your difficulty today, as He said to Paul, I am with you. You will make it to shore. If you're feeling battered or bruised today, if you feel life's cracking up or falling apart, you are in phase 4. God is going to shape you even in this if you let Him. There are life lessons to learn even in this. Don't throw away your courage and your convictions or your values. Don't stop doing what you know helps stabilize you in your faith. Don't throw out those things that keep you close to God, Bible reading, praying, fellowship with other Christians who can encourage you. And believe it or not, even in your storm, as Paul did, you can encourage others. Don't give up. Don't allow yourself to get anxious. Don't drift. Don't despair. Don't discard that hope. Don't throw away the relationships, the friendships that you know are key to this. Start doubting your doubts and turn to God again. Don't express or suppress. Don't express your anxiety till everybody will listen. Don't suppress it. Don't kind of convince yourself that the problems aren't there or they don't exist. Instead, confess. Don't express or suppress. Confess your part in the mess. Confront your fears and do not give up. Hang on. You're almost in the deliverance phase. And we'll hear more about that from Simon next week. God bless you, folks. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.